Hey everybody, my name's Drew. We're going to be doing some Scratch programming. So if you've made it here because you came to our West Gippsland Library session, then that's awesome. If you're just here because you want to learn some Scratch, that's awesome too. We're not doing anything massively complicated. We're going to play around with a few different concepts, but that's okay. If you didn't make it to the session, cool. You can do exactly what we did in the Scratch session at the library here. Otherwise, if you just come here from some random place, then that's also fine. We're going to be making a game of Asteroids. So you can see I've already called mine Asteroids Tutorial because it's just a tutorial on how to make it. I guess we'll just jump straight in then. So first thing we want to do is just right click on Scratch the Cat. We just want to delete him. We don't need him, that's fine. We want to get rid of that, have a nice clean workspace. Next thing we want to do is we want to change around our in Scratch backgrounds are called backdrops. So because we're doing it in space, we want a black background. So we're going to click on down the bottom here where my mouse is, new backdrop, and we're going to paint new backdrop. And all we need to do is just jump in and click fill with color, and we want to go black, and we're just going to click on our screen, and now you can see we have a nice black background, and that's really good. So we can move on from there. Okay, so the next thing that we want to do is we want a screen that comes up when we finish the game. So we've been blown up by the asteroids because we can't destroy them all, and we want the screen to come up saying game over, our ship's destroyed. Now we've actually got an image already ready to go for that, so we don't have to do anything here. What we want to do is up here, we want to click on upload backdrop from file. So we're clicking on there, and in that same folder in the folder where you've saved all the files, we want to go game over fail. So all of these files should be in a link in the description, so you can download them onto your computer and we can run from there. So that's cool. That's what we're going to see when we finish the game, but we don't want it to come up until we finish, so we're going to click back on our backdrop too for the moment. Next, what we want to do is we want to get all of our different sprites in, so pictures in programming and in Scratch in general, that sort of thing. They're all called sprites. So there's a whole lot that I've put in for this project, and we're just going to grab them now. So if we click on upload sprite from file, if we click on there, we can see we've got a whole lot here, as well as the one we just used. So if you hold down control, you can actually select multiple at a time. So we're going to click asteroid 1, we're going to get asteroid small 1, we're going to get bullet, and we're going to get ship. We're going to click open, and we'll get all of those all loaded in at once. Okay, so there's a few things we need to do now with the setup. So with the ship, we want to put a new costume on it. So we want to see the engine firing when we move. So what we're going to do is we're going to get a new costume from file, and this one's going to be ship move. So you just double click on that, and you can see now we've got ship and ship move. And we're going to click back on ship, just like that. So we want to do our asteroid. So we're going to click on upload costume from file. That's all fine. And then what we want to do is we want to grab Asteroid 2 and Asteroid 3, because this is actually our big one. So we're going to do our small one in a second. Okay, now next one we want to click on our small asteroid, and we're going to make this a little bit easier actually. We're going to click on this little, so if you click on the small asteroid and then you click on the eye, then we can just change this from asteroid small 1, just put S and then asteroid. And that way we can see it a bit easier. So then if you go back to here, we can see we've got S asteroid and then asteroid 1, which we're going to do the same thing with the big one, but we're going to put B asteroid. There we go. Alright, so we're going to go jump into our small one, and we're going to do the same thing as we did with our big one, and we're going to grab small 2 and small 3. So again, holding down control means you can select multiple at once. So there we go, we've got 1, 2 and 3, and we've got our big asteroid 1, 2 and 3, which is good. So that's exactly what we need, and that's how it should look. Alright, so now what we can do some exciting bits. We can actually get on with our programming. So the first thing we need to do is we need to click on our events, because what we want to do is when we click the start button, we need to reset our game. So we're going to grab our start clicked, so the little flag is our start button. Then we need to do some resetting of our other values. So what we need to do is we need to reset our final score for our previous game. So we're going to click on data, and we're actually going to make our variables first. So we're going to make a list to start with. And what we're going to call this is final score. Okay, and we're going to leave it for all sprites, that's fine, and we're going to click OK. Alright, and you can see it gets a bit in the way here, so what we're actually going to do is drag this so it sits here, but we need to change the size. So down the bottom corner here, there's a few little lines. If you click and hold those, you can see if you can drag them around. So still holding them, you can drag it so it changes size, get it to about that size, and then just drag it down so it sits in the bottom center of the screen. And that will be quite good. Okay, so the next thing that we need to do is we actually need to set our lives and our score. So we need to play around with those variables. So we're going to make some variables for those now. So we're going to click Make Variable. We're going to click it and call it. So the first one we're doing is just going to call Lives. And we're going to make another one, and we're going to call that Score. And that means that we've got two. So you can see they come up the top here. We don't want them to be there, so what we're actually going to do is drag Score across to here. So we have just two up the top, and they're not quite as in the way. So now that we've got those, what we actually need to do is reset it so that when we start our new game, everything gets back to 0, which is good. And we also want to hide this big in-your-face final score section here. So we're going to grab Hide List down the bottom here, Final Score, and just drag it. You can see that it comes up white when it's going to click in. So we just let it go there and in it clicks. And the next thing we want to do is we want to grab the one that says Set Score to 0. And we're going to leave that as 0, and we're going to grab that same exact one again, but this time we're changing it from Score to Lives, and we want to change it from 0 to 3. Okay, so it should just look just like that. Alright, so the next thing we need to do is we need to change our backdrop. So what will happen is when we finish our game, we're going to end up with it coming up like this, and then we'll have our score underneath. But we want to, when we start our game again, we need to reset our backdrop. So if we go back to scripts and click on our ship again, so if you've gone away from it, just make sure you clicked on your ship, and we want to go into looks, and then grab the one that says switch backdrop to game over fail. And what that will do is, and we want to actually change this from game over fail to backdrop 2, because that's our black one. And the last little bits that we need to do is we need to reset our ship. When we start again, we need to have our ship back in the center of the screen and pointing upwards. So we're going to click on motion, and we're going to grab the one that says go to X with a number and Y and a number. So we're going to click on those. We're just going to change them both to 0. So they're both going to be 0. So it'll have go to X 0 and Y 0. Then under that we want to turn our ship so it's facing the right direction. So we're going to grab point in direction, and instead of 90 we're just going to put 0. Okay, so if we now go ahead and we click the start button, you can see it gets reset, our ship's facing upwards, and the score has disappeared, which is good, that's what we want it to be. And lives are 3, and score is 0. So that's excellent, that's how it needs to be. Alright, so the next thing that we need to do is we're going to start making our ship move. So what we're going to do is we're going to make it rotate first. So we're going to click on events, so up here click on events, and we're going to grab the one that says when space pressed, but we're going to change it from space to the right arrow. Okay, we'll just leave it there, that's nice and easy. So we want to grab this is to turn our ship so we can make it rotate on the spot. So we're going to go into control, because what we want to do is we want to make it keep turning until we let go of the key. So at the moment what will happen is it'll get a bit jerky and it won't work very well. So we're going to grab the one that says repeat until, and we're just going to drop that underneath. And so what that'll do is it'll repeat until something else happens. And what we're going to do is we're going to make it so it repeats until we're not pressing our right key anymore. So we're going to grab this not one here, so sorry, we're going to go into operators, and we're going to grab the one that says not and drag it so it slots in. So if you hold it to the side there, you can see it's going to drop in very nicely. So we let it go, and then what you want to do is we want to grab the one that says key right arrow pressed. Oh sorry, so we need to go into sensing. We need to grab the one that says key space key pressed, and just drop that in. So again, hold it to the side. See how there is where the inside of the knot lights up, but if I put it here, the whole lot lights up. We just want to drop it in the knot, so just that bit there, because otherwise this will happen. So if you drop it like this, then you'll chuck the knot out, and that's not what we want. So we want to make sure we put it inside the knot, and the knot needs to go inside the repeat until. Okay, so next thing that we want to do is we want to just jump in and where are we up to? There we are. So we need to make it turn now. So we want to go into motion, and we want to grab the one that says turn 15 degrees to the right. Make sure it's that top one there, and just change it from 15 to 7, because that's a little bit, 15 is going to be a little bit quick. Alright, so now, oh, I've just missed something that we've missed here. So where it says key space pressed, we need to make sure that says right arrow as well. So they should both be right arrow. Alright, so now that we can move right, what you can see, if we press the start button and we press our right arrow down, we should turn, yeah, there we go, we should turn to the right. So then if we click the start, we'll reset straight up to the top again. Alright, so we can turn right, that's a bit boring. We need to be able to turn left, and we need to be able to go forwards as well. So we're going to click, so what we're going to do is very much the same for the left arrow. So we're just going to right click on this bit where it says when right key pressed, right click, press duplicate, and we're just going to drop it there. Now what we want to do is we want to change both of these to left arrow. So we're going to click the drop down arrow, click left, and same one for here, so left. Then we want to get rid of this turn degrees, because we actually want to turn the other way. So we're going to grab the one that's opposite to that. So you can see one is one way and one is the other. And again, we want to change it from 15 to 7. So then if we click our start button again, what you'll find is we can turn left and we can turn right, and that's all done. Okay, so now we get to the exciting part. We can actually start to move. So what we're going to do is we are going to jump on in and grab another event, so up the top here, when space key pressed, and we're going to change that this time from space to the up arrow. Alright, what we want to do now is when we're going forwards, we actually want to make it so our ship move costume comes up, so we can see our little engine firing at the bottom there. So we want to grab the one that says switch costume, so we want to go into looks, and then switch costume to ship move. Okay, so now that we've got that, we need to actually start doing some movement. So what we want to do is go into control, grab the one that says repeat until, so this one down here, and then we want to go into, so we're going to keep going until we're not, so same as what we did before, keep going until we're not pressing the up arrow. So if we go into sensing, actually sorry, we're going to go into operators, and we're going to grab the one that says not, and then what we'll do is we'll go into sensing, grab the one same as before, key space pressed, and make sure it drops into that knot in there, and then also make sure you change it from space to the up arrow. Okay, so we're going to keep going forwards until we let go of the up arrow, and then we'll slow down. Right, so we're going to do a few little bits and pieces before we get right into the movement. So the first thing is we need to make our variable for our speed, because our speed is going to change depending on how long we hold it down for, and then we'll also slow down again once we've stopped holding down the forwards arrow. So we're going to go make a variable, and we're going to just call this one speed. Okay, so there it is there. And the next thing we want to do is, the other thing we want to do while we're here is we want to make it so we can't fly off the edge of the screen, because otherwise the issue is we're going to just run into the edge, and that doesn't make it very easy. So what we want to do is, as we're flying, if we come off the top section here, we're going to come on down the bottom here, and same thing, if we come off the bottom, we're going to go on the top, and if we come off the side, we'll come on the other side. So it'll be sort of a big loop. We're just going to keep looping around, round and round and round and round and round. Okay, so what we want to do is we're actually going to make our own block. So we're going to go into more blocks and click make block. We're going to type in if on edge loop to other side of screen. Okay. And remember, this is a video, so if you are getting left behind, just pause it, catch up, or rewind it, or whatever you need to do. That's the glorious thing about a video. Okay, so we're going to basically what we're going to do here is we're going to be repeating a lot of the code that we're doing. So what this does is it means that we can write it once, but we can put all of our code here, our big long bit of code here, and then all we have to do to reference it later is we just need to put this in. So what this will do is wherever we put this, it'll then say, oh, well that's all of this. So we only have to type the big bit of code out once, but we can just reference it lots and lots of times and makes it a lot easier. Okay. So what we're going to jump in and do is we're going to just make our reference here. So we're going to go into control and grab the if then, and we're going to grab into operators, and the one we're using here is the greater than. So this one just down here where it's got a square, a greater than symbol, and then another square, and we want to drop that in like what we did before. Okay, so what we're doing here is we're going to put in this first box minus 240. So make sure you have that minus in the front. That's really important. Okay, let's just quickly zoom in here. That's probably going to be a bit easier. Alright, so the minus 240, that is very important that we have that. It won't work if we don't have it, so we'll need to make sure we keep that in there. The next thing that we're going to do is we need to make it so minus 240 is over this side of the screen. So what we're checking is if our ship is greater than that. So it's yes. So if it's greater than if 240 is greater than where our position is, so our position is on the other side of that number, it means we'll get set back to this side of the screen. So what we want to do is we want to check what our X position is. So X is your left and right, and Y is your up and down. So that's how it all works. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into motion. We're going to grab our X position and just drag it into there so it locks in nicely. Okay, so now that we've done that, what we need to do is we need to make it so it resets us to the other side of the screen. So we're going to jump in and we're going to grab the one that is we need to go into stay in motion, and we're going to grab the one that's set X to 0, drag that into there, but we want to change it from 0. We're going to put in 240. So basically where we've got minus 240 here and positive here, so there is the minus and there is the negative. So what's going to happen is if we go off the minus, that's the minus, that's the positive. So if we come off here, we're going to come on this side instead. So it means we just cycle through and we're not going to disappear off the screen, which is good. Right, so we've got that bit done, and we're basically going to do the same thing again, but it's a little bit different. So we'll grab the if then again. We're going to go into operators, we're going to grab the not symbol, then we're going to grab the one that says that's completely wrong. We're going to grab this one here. I'm getting ahead of myself. We're going to grab this one here that says the less than this time. So it's slightly different to the other one, so you can see they're in different directions. And that's how we're going to do it. So where we had minus there, we're actually going to have a positive 240 here. But we are going to use the X position again. So we're going to go into motion up the top here and grab our X position, and then we want to go and grab the set X to 0, but this time it's going to be minus 240 that we have there. Okay, so now that that is all done, we need to do our Y. So that's doing our sideways ones. They're all looping back nicely. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on this top one, and we're going to click duplicate, and we're going to just drop it underneath. So make sure you grabbed it from this top one here, this orange top if. So where it says if minus 240. Okay, so you can see we've got this bit here, but we actually want to change these because we're doing our Y, because we're doing our up and down. So we need to get rid of this X, just drop it back over there, and that X, and this X, and this X. And what we want to do is we want to replace them with Y. So set X to 0, set Y to 0, and set Y to 0, and we want to grab Y position and Y position. And then what we need to do is there's a different amount from here to here that there is from here to here. So what we actually want is this one is going to be minus 179, and this bottom one here is going to be 179, and this top one's going to be 179, and the bottom one will be minus 179 again. There we go. So that actually finishes off that little bit, so we can move on now. We can actually start moving our character around. So what we want to do is we're going to grab straight up in motion, move 10 steps, drop that in there. Then we're going to click on data, and we're going to move speed steps. So we're going to grab that little circle there and drop it in where it says 10, and you should then say move speed steps. And the reason we're doing that is that we can then change the value of speed in other places and make it so we're always moving speed steps. It makes it just a bit easier, and we're always going to step in the direction that we're facing. So in this case we're pointing up, so as we rotate we're going to step in that direction. Now you may have noticed earlier that we've got speed coming up here with our lives. We don't actually want that there, so all we have to do is just untick this little box here and you can see it disappears. Right, so now that we've made our big define loop section over here, we actually want to reference it. So we're going to click on more blocks, and this one that we just made, we're just going to drop it in underneath there. And what that'll do is if we hit the edge of the screen, we're just going to loop back to the start of it. Okay, so now that we've got that little bit and all our checks going, we need to actually be able to move. So we need to change our speed value, but first what we want to do is put a limit on the speed, because if we get too fast it'll just be a bit ridiculous. So we're going to grab, sorry I skipped a bit there, we're going to go into control, we're going to grab the one that says if then, and just drag it in so it sits in there but still in that orange line. So the next one we need is we're going to go into operators, and we're going to grab the less than, so the same one that we were just using before. We're going to grab the less than, but this time we're going to be grabbing, go back into data, but we want to put speed in that front one. And in the back one we're just going to type in 18. So basically what that'll do is it'll increase our speed until we get into a speed of 18, and then it won't go any faster. So 18 is our maximum speed that we can get to. Right, so what we now want to do is we want to, if we're less than our maximum speed, which we are, that's what we're checking here, we want to increase our speed. So we actually still want to be in data, and we want to grab the one that says change speed by 1. But 1 is going to be too fast, so what we actually want to do is change speed by 0.6, so 0.6. So a little bit slower. Okay. Now that section is actually done there, so what we want to do is we want to start on our slowing down section. So we're going to do same as what we did before. We're going to grab repeat until, and this time we're going to use an or. So we're going to go into operators. We're going to grab this one that says there's a gap or another gap. We're going to drop that in so it goes into our repeat until. Okay, so the reason we're doing that is so we can check two different things. So we're going to, in our first one, we're going to grab our box equals box, and the second one we want to grab our less than again, so the same one we had before, and just drop it in underneath there. So what you want to do for the first one is you want to grab, so we're going to go back into data and we're going to grab our speed variable again. And we're going to put that in the first box, and in the first box, in the second box we want to type in 0. So we're going to keep going with whatever this is, which is going to be our slowing down, until we reach 0. Or we're going to grab our speed variable again until our speed is less than 0. So that just adds an extra check, just in case we somehow get below 0, which we might. It'll then stop. It won't go any slower. So that's all good. So what we need to do, and because the reason we do these checks is if we let it go further back than 0, then we'd start going backwards instead of forwards, and we don't want that because that'll ruin the game. So we're going to jump straight in now, and we want to make it so that even if we're slowing down, we can still speed up again. So we're going to right click on this bit we did here, and we're going to click duplicate. So the bit that we've got the repeat until we're not pressing our arrow key, that's fine, and we want to drop it into that section we just made, but we don't want this bottom part again. So we're going to get rid of that. We're just going to drag that over there. So what you should have is repeat until speed equals 0 or speed is less than 0. And then underneath that, immediately underneath that, repeat until not pressing the up arrow pressed. And then what we'll do is it'll then check whether or not we're pressing the up arrow. Okay, and we've actually just missed a section here. So what we want to do is we want to grab this if then, so into control, if then else, and we want to put it so that it jumps in here. So you can see it's just jumped in between those two. And what we want to do is we want to check if our up arrow is pressed. So we want to go into sensing again, key space pressed, and click on the space and change it to the up arrow. So what we're going to do there is if our up is pressed while we're slowing down, we can speed up again. And that's essentially what that does. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to make it so we actually do slow down when we're meant to be slowing down. So if that's happening else, if that's not happening, what we want to do is we want to motion, we want to move, continue moving because we don't want to just stop. And we want to move by the speed steps again, so same as what we were doing before, but now we're going to start slowing down our speed. But first thing we need to do is just go into more blocks, and we're going to just check if we're going to loop over the side of the screen again, because we want to keep doing it. Anytime we move, we want to check if we're going to loop, because otherwise what will happen is we'll loop accidentally and then we won't be able to stop it. So after that, now we need to start slowing our speed down just a little bit each time. So we're going to go into data, and we're going to grab the one that says change speed by 1, put that underneath there, still in the orange lines, and just change it from 1 to minus 0.5. So that's important. The really important is the minus bit. Okay, and then once we've finished everything, so once we've exited this, because we're only repeating this until our speed is 0, so we've stopped, we want to turn our engines off. So we're going to go into looks, and we're going to go switch our costume from ship move to ship. So we have no engine blur. So that actually finishes our ship movement there. Our ship is very close to, actually our ship is done. Our ship is completely finished. So what we're going to do, we'll move these up a little bit so we can see them a bit easier. The other thing you can do is if it gets a little bit messy, you can actually right click and just click clean up, and it'll automatically just group them really nicely for you. So now that we've done our ship, if you press the start button and you move forward, you can see you can turn and you can move forward, and if you let go you slow down slowly. So if I let go, you can see you just sort of drift to a stop, and if we go off the side of the screen we can come back on as well. So that's all working well. Okay, so that's all working, and if we press start again we'll go back to the start. So that is exactly what we need to do. We'll just quickly double check that if we slow down and stop, yep, our engine blur disappears, which is good. Okay, so it's all working. Right, so that's our ship is completely finished. So now what we'll move on to is we'll start doing our asteroid. So we'll start with our big asteroid, I think. So what we're going to do, there's a couple of things that we're going to use from our ship part that we're going to just copy, and mainly it's just going to be this little bit here. So what we're going to do, so we can copy it to that, we're going to click and drag this, so hold it down, and just let it drop over the top of your big asteroid. So then it looks like nothing happens, but if we click on our big asteroid now, so down here, you can see that's already in there. So that's all good, but we need to change a few little things. And the main things we need to change are just the values. So this top one, we need to change it from minus 240 to minus 250. And this one just needs to be 250. So this one needs to be 250. And this one needs to be minus 250. Then for the for our Y ones, so the ones below, that needs to be minus 195. So then 195, so no minus. Then again, no minus 195. And this one should be minus 195. So it should just look like that. Okay, so that's that little bit done. Now what we want to do is we want to make it so that when we start our game, we want to just keep creating asteroids slowly as we're playing the game. So we'll have more and more and more and more. So what we want to do is we're going to go into events, up the top here. When start clicked, same as one we had before, we want to go into control, and we want to grab the one that says forever. And what we want to do is we want to make a clone of myself. So this one down the bottom here, create clone of myself, drop that inside our forever loop, and then we don't want it just to constantly do it, so we actually want to stay in control and grab the one that says wait 1 second, but we're going to change that to 2.5. And so what that will do is, as soon as we start our game, until our game finishes, we're just going to be continually creating clones of the asteroid. So we're going to keep making asteroids. Every 2.5 seconds we're going to have a new asteroid. So if we haven't got anything sorted yet, so we won't start it, but we're going to work out where they start in a moment. Okay, so the next thing we need to do, we need to define our game over. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into more blocks, and where we did this, we're going to actually make another block. So we're going to call this one game over, and we want to put a score value in there so we can use that later. So we're going to put in score, and then we're going to just click on options there and add a number input. And we're just going to type in score for that one. So you should have game over score and then score in this next part here. And then what you can do is you can click OK. And you can see it comes up game over score score. And we're going to define that. So basically the reason we have score there is because when we're referencing it, you can see game over score 1. So what that does is it sets our score to 1. So whenever we reference this number here, this little bit, we're going to get 1 as the answer. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to go into control, and we're going to grab our if then, and we want to grab operators and our equals, so box equals box, drop that in. We want to grab the one back into data, so we're going to use one of our variables. We're going to grab lives. So we're going to, basically what we're going to do is we're going to check if our lives, if we have no lives or if we have lives, or whichever we have. So what we want to do is we want to check if our lives equals 0. Then we can end the game. So we're going to go into looks, go switch costume, switch backdrop to game over fail, drop that inside there, and that's what we want to leave it as. Then what we want to do is we want to show our list that we hit at the start there. So we want to say show list final score, just there. And what we want to do is we want to grab this one that says replace item 1 of final score, drop that underneath with, and we're going to type in, we're not actually going to type in anything, we're going to replace that with score. So we're going to go up here and we're going to drop that in. So basically what that'll do is if we've lost all our lives, then we'll switch our backdrop to game over fail, our list will come up with our final score, and then we'll see what our score was. Essentially that's what that does. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to give our asteroids behavior when they start up. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into events, and we're going to grab the one that says actually no, we're in control. So if we go into control and we go down the bottom here, when I start as a clone, and what we want to do is we want to immediately make it show itself. So we're going to grab the one that says where are we? So we want to go into looks, we want to grab show. So immediately as we spawn, we now get to show it, and there's a couple things we need to do before we can go any further. We need to make a couple of variables. So we want to make a variable called x position. So what that's for is what our x position is for is when we want it to spawn in a random location along the edges here. So around here we want to have a random spawning spot. So we're going to make a variable. These ones are just going to be for this sprite. So we want to grab xpos. Okay, make another one, and we want to call this one start x, and a new one called start y. Now start x and start y are for, they both need to be for all sprites, but the xpos is just for a local variable. And we don't want to be able to see any of them, so we're going to untick all of these. So start x and start y are actually for our smaller asteroids that are going to we're going to get 2 from our big one, and they're going to come apart, and that's where we use our start x and our start y. Okay, so what we need to jump onto next is we need to start, we need to get a random number for our xpos. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab set xpos2 under there, and this time we're going to jump into operators and pick random 1 to 10, drop that in there, but we're going to go from 1 to 2. Okay, and the reason we do that is so we can pick 2 different sides, because we're going to be able to pick either here or here. No, here or here, sorry. Front or back side of the screen. So we're going to jump straight in for that, and we're going to go into control, and we're going to grab the one that says, we're going to grab an if then else, so this one here, and we want to go into operators, and we want to grab the equals, so the same one we were using before, then back into data, and grab the xpos. So if xpos equals 1, then we want to go into motion, and we want to grab the one that says set x to 0. We want to set x to minus 240, and we want to point in the direction of the main screen. So if we're at minus 100 or 240, we're here, so we want to point in this sort of arc. So we want to point in this direction so that we can come into the screen rather than just fly off it immediately as we finish, or as we come in, sorry. So what we want to do is we want to go point in direction 90, but we're going to go back into operators and grab the one random from 1 to 10. And we're going to be random from 1 to 180, so 180. Nice and simple. And then what we want to do is if it's not 1, then it's obviously going to be 2, because we can only be either 1 or 2. So if it's 2, we're going to be starting on this side. So what we want to do is go back into motion, and we want to grab again set x to 0, but we're going to change it to positive 240 this time. So 240, and we want to grab point in direction, so same as what we had before, and back into operators and grab pick random from 1 to 10, but this time it's going to be from minus 1 to minus 179. Okay, so that does that bit. Okay, always remember to keep saving. Scratch should automatically save, but if it doesn't, just click up there, save. It's always a better idea than get all the way through, not realise you haven't saved, and then lose everything when it crashes. Okay, so we'll continue on then. So we'll go into control, and we want to grab the one that says repeat until, just here, and we're going to be repeating that. So we're going to be keeping on moving. This is where we put our movement for our asteroids. We're going to keep moving until we collide with either a ship or one of the ship's bullets. So we want to go into operators. So we're going to use that or again. So just there, and then we're going to go into sensing. We're going to grab touching, so the very top one there, one in there, and another one in there. So the first one is going to be ship, and the second one is going to be bullet. Okay, now what we want to do is, if we're not touching either of those, we want to move. So we're going to move not 10, because that's very, very quick, so we're going to move 2 steps. And then the next thing we need to do for that is we need to make sure that we're not going to get off the edge of the screen. So if we're on the edge, loop to the other side of the screen. So we're just going to drag that in. Okay. So next what we need to check is if we're touching the bullet, then we need to destroy the asteroid. So we're going to go back into control, grab our if statement, and back into sensing, grab our touching, and change that one to bullet. Okay, so now that we've got that, we can actually check. So now we've checked, yes, we are touching the bullet, so we need to destroy the asteroids. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into data. We're going to get set xpos to 0, but we're going to change that from 0 to start x, and we're going to put that as motion. So go into motion, and we're going to grab x position. So what that does is when we create our small asteroids that we're going to create when we blow up a big one, we're going to be creating its starting x position, so it's starting on the left and right, is going to be the same as what our big one was. So that's what we're doing here. So the next what we need to do is we need to do our y, so we're going to do a similar sort of thing. Data, set x to pos 1, set x pos to 0, change that to y, and go into motion, and this time we're going to be y position. So that should just look like that. So now what we want to do is we want to create a clone. Okay, so we want to create a clone of that. So we're going to go into control, create a clone of myself, but we're going to change this from myself to S asteroid. So S for small asteroid, and then just do the same thing again there. Okay. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to change our score. So if we collided with the bullet, we need to change our score upwards. So what we want to do is we want to go into data, and we want to get change xpos by 1. But what we're going to do is we're going to change this to 3, and we're going to change it from xpos to score. Okay, so next what we want to do is we just need to delete our old asteroid. So the asteroid that we destroyed, we need to get rid of it. So we're going to go into control and grab delete this clone, and there we go. Okay, so we've got a few more things we need to do before we've finished off our asteroid. So the next thing we need to do is we need to check if it's touching the ship, and if it's touching the ship we need to destroy it and then reduce our lives by 1. Okay. That's very odd. So we want to go into control, we want to get if then on the bottom here. If we're touching the ship, then what we want to do is we want to change this to ship. So if we're touching the ship, then we can do something. And what we want to do is we're going to go into data, we're going to go change xpos by 1, and we're going to grab that twice because the first one we're going to change from xpos to score, and the second one we're going to change to lives. So we're going to change our lives by -1, so we're going to take 1 life if we hit an asteroid. And the top one we're going to change, that we're going to leave as 1. So you can see if we shoot an asteroid we get 3 points, which is good. You want to shoot an asteroid. If you hit an asteroid you still get points, but you don't get as many. So it's very difficult. It means that you don't get as many points if you just sort of kamikaze into an asteroid. It's not a very good tactic. Don't do it. Okay, so next what we want to do is, now that we've made contact with an asteroid or we've shot something or we've possibly collided, we want to check whether or not the game is over. So what we want to do is we're going to go to more blocks, game over, score 1, and we then want to go into data and we want to grab score. So our score will be score, and we're going to check game over. So what will happen is if we come through and we go, oh no, I hit an asteroid, or oh, I shot an asteroid, it'll get to the bottom, it'll go, right, we need to check if it's game over, check to see here, if our lives equal 0, which they probably won't if we've just shot an asteroid, then nothing happens and we just continue playing as normal until we hit an asteroid and then it triggers, but our lives are at 0, so we've got no more lives left, which means the game then ends. Okay, and the last little thing we want to do, just in case, is we just want to put a delete this clone at the bottom, so control, and delete this clone. Because what we're going to do, it's not going to get to this section here, it's never going to get here unless it's already touching one of the two. So we can safely put something at the bottom and it's not going to get there unless it's not touching, or unless it's touching something. Okay, so that actually finishes off our big asteroid. Big asteroid, done. So now what we're going to do, we're going to move on to our small asteroid. And a lot of this is actually very similar. So we're going to do... There's actually a lot less for the small asteroid too, because we don't have to worry about duplicating the small asteroid. So what we're going to do is... First thing, grab our game over. And the same as what we did with our loop to the edges of the screen, we're going to drop that on our small asteroid. And again, loop to the edges of the screen, we're going to drop into our small asteroid. Okay, so now that we've got these two in there, what we want to do is we want to click on our small asteroid and we're going to start playing with how it spawns. So we want to go into control, when I start as a clone, same as what we had before. Then we're going to go into looks and we're going to grab show. Then we want to make it point in a random direction when we start. So we're going to go into motion and point in direction 90. Then we're going to go into operators and grab the one that says pick random 1 to 10. But this time we're changing this, we're going to be minus 179 and the second one will be 180. So minus 179 to 180. That basically means we can face any possible direction and it'll randomly just pick a direction to face. Okay, so next we need to pick where it actually starts. So we want set X to 0, so into motion, set X to 0, set Y to 0, and this one we're not actually going to use the number, because what we're going to do is we're going to use our old coordinates from the big asteroid that we just blew up. So start X, so data, start X, and then start Y, and that will give us our coordinates from our old asteroid. Next what we want to do is check whether or not we're touching either the ship or a bullet. So we're going to go into control and we're going to say repeat until. We're going to go into operators and we're going to grab that or, same as what we had before. Then we're going to go back into sensing and we're going to grab touching and touching again. So if we're touching either a bullet or the ship, then we'll keep doing this, which is when we start moving. So we're going to go into motion and we're going to go move 10 steps. Again, that's a bit fast, so we're going to change that from 10 steps to just 4 steps. Okay, so now we want to make sure that we can't fly off the edge of the screen, because it's the same as what we've done every other time. More blocks, if on edge, loop to the other side of screen. And underneath this is where we're going to check with our collisions. So what we're going to do is go control, if then else, and what we want to do here is we want to check if we're touching the ship. If we're touching, so we're going to go sensing, touching, and change this one to ship. And if we're touching the ship, we want to change our score by 2. So change start Y, so data, change start Y by 1, but we're going to change that from start Y to score, and we're going to increase that by 2. And then we're also going to change our lives by -1, so we're going to lose a life. And then obviously if we shoot it, so if we don't touch the ship, if it's actually touching the bullet, we want to have a higher score, so we're going to change it by 5. Okay, The last little bit we need to do is the same as what we had on the big one, is we need to check if it's game over or not. So into more blocks, game over, score 1, and back into data and grab score. And then we need to delete our asteroid that we've just blown up. So we want to delete this clone. There we go. So what that will do is it'll go through all of this, then it'll check whether or not it's game over. If we've got no lives, then we'll finish the game. Okay, so there's one last little thing we need to do for this bit, and that's just to change these values because the objects are different sizes. So this is a small asteroid, obviously it's different size to the big asteroid. That's why the values have changed a little bit. So these ones need to be minus 239. The next one is 239. The one after that is 239. And the one after that is minus 239. Okay, so the next ones are minus 179. Then you've got 179. Then 179. And the last one is minus 179. Okay, so that changes that. Let's fix all that up. Right, so we're not going to use much for our bullet from what we've done before. The only bit we're going to use is this little bit here. So we're just going to drag that and drop it in on our bullet there. So you can see I didn't take anything except that section. We don't need the top part, just that. So if we click on the bullet, there it is there. But we don't need any of these set X and set Y. So we can take them out. And we want to replace them with delete this clone. And we'll get to using this in a little bit. Just going to replace that there. That's all fixed. One other thing we will just quickly do, we just need to change these so that we can't see the big asteroid, the small asteroid, and the bullet. And the reason we do that is that we're going to be playing around with clones, so we're not actually using the main object itself. They're actually just going to sit here and do nothing. But that's fine, that's what we want them to do. But it means that we're just going to be able to see them doing nothing if we don't make them invisible. So just a little eye in the corner, and just untick show. Nice and easy. Okay, so now we're just going to click on our bullet, and we're going to finish off our bullet. So we'll start off with when our start button is clicked. So we'll go into events. When start clicked, what we want to do is we want to start a forever loop. So we're going to continually check whether or not our spacebar has been pressed. If it is, we can create a bullet and fire that bullet, and then we'll wait so we can do another bullet. So we're going to go wait until, then we want to go into sensing, and we want to grab our space key pressed. Now we actually do want space for this one. We're not going to change it because space is going to be our fire button. So what we're also going to do now is go into motion, and we're going to grab set X to 0 and set Y to 0 and point in direction 90. We're going to change all of these in a moment. So what we now want to do is go into sensing, and we want to grab this one here, the X position of ship, in on the 0 and in on the 0 and in on the 90. Now the top one we're leaving the same. The next one down we're changing X position to Y position, and the bottom one we're changing it from X position to direction. And what that will do is it'll give our bullet the same position and direction properties that our ship has. So it means our bullet will shoot out in the right direction. Okay, so last little bit we need to do is we need to make a clone so we can actually fire the clone. So we're going to go into control, and not delete this clone, we want to create a clone of myself. So we'll create the clone. And then what we want to do is wait until we're not pressing the button, pressing the spacebar, so we can shoot again. So we want to go into operators, get our not, then go into sensing, and grab our key space press. So if our key is not pressed, then we can start again. But it means that we can't just hold it down and rapid fire out, because then it'll crash the game. So we don't want that. And I'm sure some of you will probably try and crash the game now that I've said that, but that's okay. So what we're going to do next is we're going to do what our bullet does when we create it. So at the moment we're making a bullet, but it's not doing anything. So we're going to go into control when I start as a clone, this one here, and then we want to grab looks, we want to grab show, just drop it in there. Now if you accidentally click on show, you'll see the bullet comes up here. We don't want that, so if that happens, what you need to do is just go in here and just untick show again. Same as what we did before. Okay, so we're going to go into control again, and we're going to repeat until we're touching either one of the asteroids. So we're going to go into operators, and we're going to grab or, because we're going to have two things that we're going to be checking. So we're going to then go into sensing, and we're going to grab two touching. So touching and touching. Drop that and go big asteroid, small asteroid. Now this is where we're going to use our bit, but we're just quickly going to chuck in our movement. So we're going to move, so motion, move 10 steps, change that from 10 to 12, and this is where we use all of this. So we're just going to drop that in underneath there, nice and easy. And the last few little things we need to do, which we're nearly there, so we want to go into control, get our if then, and again we're going to grab our operators and go or, back into sensing, and if we're touching either that asteroid or the, you can see I've messed up the placement there, so we actually want to make sure we're putting it in the or statement. There it is. So we're touching either of the asteroids, big asteroid or small asteroid. Then we want to be able to delete our bullet, and we only need to delete the bullet. We don't need to do anything else with it because we've done it all in the other. When we did all our stuff for our asteroids, we did all of our scoring and our lives and all of that sort of thing. So we're going to go into control and just delete this clone, and that finishes off the bullet. Now the last little thing we need to do is just a little tiny thing. So what we want to do is we want to go into data, and where it says add thing to final score, so if we show final score right now, you can see it's empty. So our scoring is not going to work properly. So what we want to do is we just want to add thing. Just click it once, that's it, that's fine. Then we can untick that and make it disappear. And what will happen is when we get our score, it'll replace that with an actual number. So we're actually all done. Alrighty guys, we're all finished. Thanks for watching. You can see I'm just testing it out now. Full screen button up in the top corner brings you to a full screen, and you can hit the start button to begin. And yeah, we'll just test out, make sure everything's working, and then I mean there's a lot you can play around with. There's some good concepts that we sort of went through. That was the main purpose of this, was to go through a few concepts and different ways of doing certain things. So that's good. You can see I'm not very good at my own game. I think yep, there we go. That's fine. I'll leave it there. Have fun with it, guys.